Hello, and welcome to another edition of On the Hill Media. I'm Fosie Weston, and today, from District 16, candidate for delegate, Mr. Peter Dennis. Mr. Dennis, how are you doing today?
Doing quite well yourself.
I'm doing quite well. My first question is, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, I was born in the area. I grew up here, went to Carter Rock Springs Elementary School, Cabin John Middle School, and Winston Churchill High School. Went on to Boston College, where I got my bachelor's degree in history, and then from there went on to the Catholic University of America, where I got my Juris Doctor and a certificate in public policy. I'm a small business owner and entrepreneur, and I'm running for delegate because I want to make Maryland a cleaner, greener, more prosperous state.
Sounds great. Now, if elected, what do you plan to accomplish within your first year of office?
Well, there are quite a few things that I want to do. The first thing that I want to do, the first bill that I'll push for, is a bill that will make marriage equality the law of the land. Now, I don't think that this is just a matter of gay rights. I don't think it's just a matter of equality. I think it goes deeper than that. I think this has to do with liberty, freedom, and the pursuit of happiness. I don't think that we as a people can consider ourselves to be truly free until we're free to marry the person we truly love. The other issues that are really big for me are education. I want to fully fund our schools in accordance with the Thornton Plan. I also want to fully fund the Maryland Teachers Pension Fund at the state level, something that in the legislature they're considering changing to dump the funding requirements onto the counties, but the counties don't have the money. So that's those are the big three.
Sounds good. In the next year, we know our General Assembly needs to make $1 billion in budget cuts. What do you think we need to do to make this successful?
Well, the first thing that I'd want to do, and I want to state this right off the bat, is protect our funding for education. In addition to that, what it comes down to is, are we going to tax more or are we going to spend less? One of the things that I really think that we should do is increase certain taxes. Now, I'm not saying increase taxes across the board. I'm saying specifically target certain areas of our economy where we could use some tax increases. For example, our tax on alcohol is the second lowest in the country. I've proposed that we simply bring that up to the national average. That could generate gosh knows how much money. In addition to that, I believe that we should raise our tax on tobacco to the rates that they currently have in D.C. That's about 50 cents a pack, which would raise quite a bit more. And in addition to that, I think that we should decriminalize marijuana and tax the hell out of it. Right now, it's estimated that we spend about $250 million a year enforcing our prohibition against marijuana. If we end the prohibition, decriminalize it, and tax it, we could save that $250 million, raise hundreds of millions of dollars more.
Would you have to do more regulation with that?
Yes, you'd of course have to regulate. Right now, the way the system is set up is this is an area of the economy, and it's a fairly big area of the economy. When you look at the United States overall, marijuana actually is a bigger portion of our economy than corn. And so what you need to do is you need to tax it and you need to regulate it. So specifically say that, yes, if you need it for medicinal purposes, we'll sell it to you, but there's going to be a tax on it, similar to the way that California has done.
Right. Now, let me ask you about the small businesses.
Yes.
We know in this tumultuous times, I should say, we are seeing the big bite going to them. What should we do to help them out?
Well, as a small business owner myself, I can tell you that Maryland is not necessarily known as the most business-friendly state out there. What I'd like to do as delegate, and this would actually be a multi-year project, is to try to shape our business and corporate law to match that of Delaware, to make us competitive with them as a state that's business friendly. Now, that said, I still think that we should continue to keep in place the laws that we have with respect to the environment, make sure that businesses are in compliance with all this. But at the same time, what I'd really like to do is provide tax incentives for companies which specifically work in the area of high technology, biotechnology, and green energy to encourage companies like that to move to the area and provide high quality jobs to our people. In addition, I'd also like to find a way that we could provide additional money for small business owners and the resources to help them get started. And right now what we have is business incubators. These are programs where if you're a small business owner, you can go down to Rockville and there's an office building there with shared resources that'll help you get off the ground by minimizing your overhead costs. I'd like to expand on those programs throughout the state.
Great. Now, we know there has been calls to Maryland to do more to clean up the Chesapeake Bay. What is your stance on that?
Well, we've actually done a pretty good job during the course of the past few decades to pass new legislation to protect the bay from agricultural runoff. But more needs to be done. And what I'd like to do, there are two specific proposals that I have if I was to be delegate that I'd like to see passed. The first is I think we need further regulation of agricultural runoff. As delegate, I'd want to make sure that every single acre of agricultural land in the state of Maryland is essentially regulated by the Department of Agriculture in such a way so that if you were brought into compliance with the latest environmental regulations, you essentially are able to continue, not tax-free, but there would not be a tax imposed upon you. Alternatively, if you choose not to bring your farm into compliance with these regulations, you essentially would have a tax, an environmental tax, call it a green tax if you will, for not addressing the environmental problems. Theoretically, this would give farms a financial incentive to come into compliance and help clean up the bay. The other thing that I'd really like to do is impose new regulations on developers so that when they're building a new community, they're required by law to build in advanced stormwater management systems in every community they build. Now, developers up until now have been very resistant to this idea, mainly because it adds to their building costs, and this is true. But at the same time, a recent study recently found that the stormwater runoff from these communities is doing a great amount of damage to the bay. So those are the big two. Now, I'm a kayaker. I spend quite a bit of time kayaking down in the Potomac River. And so I spend time in this water, and I've seen the damage that the agricultural runoff and stormwater runoff does. So that's one of the big issues that I'd like to address as state delegate.
Right. Now, with the citizens in this area, what do you think you want to do to actually get them more involved with the environment? Should we have an incentive with them?
Well, one of the things that I'd really like to do, and I know this might not be necessarily the most politically popular idea, is increase the gas tax by 5 to 10 cents. Now, there are things that we can all do in our own homes by making them more energy efficient or by buying cars that are hybrids or fuel-efficient cars to help out. But at the same time, doing something like raising the gas tax by 5 to 10 cents, can give us essentially a financial incentive towards driving less wastefully. So you don't necessarily go out for joy rides or just a quick trip into town if you don't really have a reason to.
All right, we know in Maryland that we have schools in the top 10% in the nation when it comes to our education. Also, we have schools in the bottom 10. What do we need to do to improve this?
Well, I think what we've been doing for the past few years has actually been making great strides in the right direction. For the past couple of years, Maryland has had the best schools in the country on average. Now, the big reason behind that, to the best of my understanding, is that we have been funding our schools in accordance with the Thornton Plan. Now, what the Thornton Plan does is it takes money, or it gives additional money to schools that are in less wealthy areas to help bring them up. But at the same time, this has it doesn't punish the schools that are already doing fairly well or in wealthier areas. So I think we need to continue doing that. I think that's probably the best thing that we can do. But I'm not a big fan of the approach that a lot of politicians take, which is just more and more standardized testing and then punishing those schools that don't meet whatever the testing requirements are.
Right.
I think we actually need to give school administrators and teachers more leeway to figure out the solutions on the local level.
In the state of Maryland, what other issues do we have here that we haven't addressed yet?
Well, there are a few issues that I don't think any of my other candidates have really addressed in depth. First of all, the legalization or decriminalization of marijuana, which would save our state quite a bit of money. I've already mentioned that one. But another thing that I think we need to do is get rid of a couple laws which are quite antiquated, specifically CR 3-321 and CR 3-322. Now, if you don't know what these laws are, they're laws that were put on the books years and years ago. And what they say is that the state of Maryland can arrest you for certain things that you do in the privacy of your own bedroom with someone you love. Now, I'm not going to get into the specifics because this is, of course, public television, and I don't want to go too in-depth if children are watching. But the long and the short of it is I don't think the government should have any ability whatsoever to declare anything that you do with someone that you love in the privacy of your own bedroom a crime. I don't think they should be able to put you away in jail for 10 years for anything along those lines.
Right.
And so it blows my mind that our state legislature has not weeded out these old and antiquated laws. Another area where I think we need massive reform is our alcohol laws. Our alcohol laws are antiquated, they're outdated. They essentially protect two big companies which essentially have a monopoly on alcohol distribution in the state. And they also limit consumer choice. I'd like to reform our laws, mainly to ensure that we give consumers the most choice that they can possibly have, while simultaneously providing for a system in which responsible behavior, responsible drinking, responsible use is encouraged, and abuse and binge drinking are no longer encouraged.
Well, Mr. Dennis, it has been a pleasure to be with you today.
Hey, it's been pleasures all here.
All right. For more information about Mr. Dennis, please visit his website, peterdennis.net. And for more other information, please visit our website, onthehillmedia.com.